WNPR.com.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yes!
This is the Ross Kaminsky Show.
You're a great American.
Now, Ross Kaminsky.
Come on, man.
On Denver's talk station, 630 KHOW.
You know, separate from the spectacle of New York Governor Andrew Cuomo resigning, we're going to have some audio from his pathetic little speech in a moment. The whole sorry thing just reminds me, especially in the context of some other stuff we're going to talk about today with what the U.S. Senate is doing. It just reminds me what a complete disaster so many governments, federal, state governments, some city governments, what a disaster situation we're living in the United States of America. I'm not intentionally feeling negative this morning, but when I think about all the stuff that's going on, it really is pretty remarkable to be reminded in so many ways about how many terrible people have been elected to office by voters of the United States of America at every level. Think about what a heinous piece of work Kamala Harris is. Think about what a slimy, gross swamp creature Chuck Schumer is. And we're going to talk more about the Senate later. This guy who used to be, a New York liberal, right? Left of center, but not a lunatic. And now he's become a lunatic because he's afraid of a primary challenge from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, one of the nation's leading lunatics. At the governor level, Andrew Cuomo. Oh my gosh. Really? And locally, we didn't talk about it yesterday. Hopefully I'll have a little time later today. But to talk about the fact that, so typically in legislative bodies, if a measure is up for a vote, if it ties, that means it loses. Right? In Congress, in every legislature that I'm aware of, a tie means a loss when you're voting on a new piece of legislation, a new law, a new rule, that sort of thing. Maybe there are some places where a tie isn't a loss, but I don't know about them. And there was a tie vote in Aurora on, Monday evening? On Mayor Mike Kaufman's move to change the way Aurora handles the homeless and to allow homeless camps to be moved 3 days after telling the homeless people, hey, you're going to have to move, and offering them a place they could go. That's still tied because voters in Aurora have elected socialists. And I'm not saying that is some form of hyperbole or just someone who's a little to the left of me. I call them a socialist. It's not it. These are people who wear their Democrat Socialist Party affiliation pins on their lapels in their official photos. We're electing these people. And again, before I get to Cuomo, I want to just talk about a couple of women. We mentioned yesterday Melissa DeRosa, so that was Andrew Cuomo's primary henchman, his lead advisor, who was mentioned a lot in the Attorney General's report about all the stuff that Cuomo did. And she is mentioned in I haven't read the report, so I'm going from news reports about it. But she is mentioned in the context of, and primarily in the context of helping Cuomo retaliate against women who accused him of harassing them. And as I mentioned yesterday, I suspect that Melissa DeRosa used to be a good person, used to be a decent person. I mean, she could never have been that decent because she worked for Organizing for America and the whole Obama thing. But I think her heart was probably in the right place, even if her actions weren't. But then at some point, she gets to this position of very significant power. And I'll tell you what, you ever been around Washington, D.C., places like that, the folks who are right next to the elected politicians, the folks who work in the backgrounds but really control what the politicians do, the chiefs of staff, the legislative directors, people like that, that's where the power is. Day to day, moment to moment, you want to get something done in Washington, D.C., you better get to know the chief of staff, or at least the legislative director. And these people, it goes to their heads lots of times. And suddenly they find themselves in a position that is not as famous, but almost as powerful as the guy or gal that they've been elected, that was elected to office. And now these people have it go to their heads, and they'll do anything to keep their own power, and that means doing anything to support the person who is actually in the elected office, because people aren't voting for Melissa DeRosa, they're voting for Andrew Cuomo, and then he keeps her around. My wife described Melissa DeRosa as Andrew Cuomo's Ghislaine Maxwell, which I think is a pretty solid comparison. Ghislaine Maxwell being the woman who acquired young female victims for Jeffrey Epstein. I do think Ghislaine Maxwell is a more evil creature than Melissa DeRosa, but you get my point, or you get my wife's point. There's a woman named Roberta Kaplan. She was the chairwoman of a group called Time's Up and co-founder of its legal defense fund. She's a well-known left-wing lawyer, and this group, Time's Up, was founded, and I'm going to quote from the New York Times here, to fight sexual abuse and promote gender equality. So apparently, this woman was involved drafting a letter, which ended up not getting published, but drafting an op-ed attacking the character of one of Cuomo's female victims. Or maybe that was that she reviewed it rather than wrote it. In any case, she was involved with the process of an op-ed aimed at crushing one of Cuomo's accusers. She just had to resign from Time's Up. Again, with the New York Times, the op-ed letter was never published. It was part of a broader effort in which Mr. Cuomo and his aides sought counsel from former administration officials, including Alfonso David, the president of the Human Rights Campaign, the largest LGBTQ political lobbying organization in the country. Another person from Time's Up named Tina Chen, and of course, Chris Cuomo, Andrew's brother, all apparently served as his sort of kitchen cabinet, figuring out how to defend himself against these multiple allegations by multiple women, all alleging similar kinds of behavior. And all of these lofty, I care about you, hashtag me too, hashtag Time's Up, liberals all did their little bits to support Andrew Cuomo in his effort to stomp the women that he harassed. When are people going to learn that while there may be a few folks out there who are deeply concerned about women's rights, gay rights, minority rights, whatever it might be, when are people going to learn that most of the public-facing part of this stuff is a giant grift? Look, I want women to have the same rights as men. I want blacks to have the same rights as women. I want blacks to have the same rights as whites. I want all people in the United States of America, just like our founding documents say, to be treated equally, as we are all born equal. That was like a Joe Biden moment, right? Where he said, what did he say? Poor people should have the same something as white people. Remember that Biden moment? Oh my gosh, I almost did one of those. But my point is, I deeply believe in these values. It's sort of Martin Luther King kind of thing, right? Judge people based on the content of your character and not the color of your skin. And you could extend that to, to whether you got boy parts or girl parts, or to, whether you're sexually attracted to the opposite sex or the same sex. I just don't care. I just need to know whether you're a decent person, whether you're doing your job, whether, that sort of thing. And there are some people whose life's work really is to make sure that this group or that group or the other group is treated fairly. But so much of this stuff is a giant grift. It is all just how much money can we raise? Can I get invited to all the best cocktail parties? Can I influence legislation so that then I can go out and claim that I influenced legislation so that I can raise more money and get invited to more cocktail parties? It's a giant grift. Especially the race stuff, and it long has been, with Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson shaking down people, and now, Robin DiAngelo, who's white, and Ibram Kendi, whose name is Kenny Harrison or something like that, his real name. It's a grift. These people are selling books and making money and pretending to care, and Americans are buying it, and it's gross. It's really, really gross. It's about this gross.
The most serious allegations made against me had no credible factual basis in the report. And there is a difference between alleged improper conduct and concluding sexual harassment. Now, don't get me wrong. This is not to say that there are not 11 women who I truly offended. There are. And for that, I deeply, deeply apologize. I thought a hug and putting my arm around a staff person while taking a picture was friendly. But she found it to be too forward. I kissed...
Hey, Andrew, I think it might have been the hand down the pants grabbing her ass part that was a little too forward. Just possibly.
A woman on the cheek at a wedding, and I thought I was being nice, but she felt that it was too aggressive. I have slipped and called people honey, sweetheart, and darling. I meant it to be endearing, but women found it dated and offensive.
Right, that's his problem. He's just too old-fashioned.
I said on national TV to a doctor wearing PPE and giving me a COVID nasal swab, "You make that gown look good." I was joking. Obviously, otherwise I wouldn't have said it on national TV. But she found it disrespectful. I take full responsibility for my actions. I have been too familiar with people. My sense of humor can be insensitive and off-putting. I do hug and kiss people casually.
And apparently Andrew's definition of a hug is putting his hand up a woman's shirt and grabbing her boob. That's what counts as a hug in the Cuomo household.
Women and men. I have done it all my life.
All right, show me the last time, Andrew, that you put a hand up a guy's shirt and grabbed his boob.
It's who I've been since I can remember.
That I believe.
In my mind, I've never crossed the line with anyone.
In my mind, right.
But I didn't realize the extent to which the line has been redrawn.
Ugh. Remember, this is a guy who was so proud just recently of signing some of the most aggressive legislation in the country and allowing women to have causes of action against guys or potentially other women who committed sexual harassment against them. He has been actively involved in these conversations. It's been going on all around him. Even if you believe him, and I don't, that he quote unquote, didn't understand the degree to which the line has moved or been redrawn. That, even if that were true, that could only come from a remarkable, utter tone deafness or just simply not listening to everything going on around you while you were signing a law about this very issue.
New York tough means New York loving.
Ugh.
And I love New York.
Ugh.
And I love you.
Oh, I bet
And
you
everything
do.
I have ever done has been motivated by that love.
Please no.
And I would never want to be unhelpful in any way.
Oh, really?
And I think that given the circumstances, the best way I can help now
Going to rehab?
is if I step aside and let government get back to governing.
Ooh,
And therefore, that's what I'll do.
that doesn't sound like much of an
Because I
improvement.
work for you. And doing the right thing is doing the right thing for you.
Oh, you're my hero.
Because as we say, it's not about me.
Really?
It's about we.
Oh,
Kathy Hochul, my lieutenant governor, is smart and competent. This transition must be seamless. We have a lot going on. I'm very worried about the Delta variant, and so should you be. But she can come up to speed quickly, and my resignation will be effective in 14 days.
he had no friends left. He had nowhere to go. Last quick thought on Cuomo. As bad as he is, he's not a raging leftist. Now, I'm not saying he shouldn't have, he should be gone, and perhaps he should still be impeached to prevent him from running for office again in the future. But make no mistake, part of the reason for the attack on Cuomo, which he just made easier by being such a jackass, is that among today's radical, woke, progressive left, in New York State and everywhere else, but we're talking about New York right now, Cuomo was not far enough left. And they wanted him out of the way so that they can run a much more leftist candidate for governor next year. They might get their way. They've long wanted him gone. And the fact that he was such an ignorant jackass, he just made it very easy for them. He never had a lot of friends. He alienated what few he had. I'm glad he's gone, but I do think New York will end up suffering for it too.
KHOW Denver, 630 KHOW. An iHeart radio station. Available everywhere on our free iHeart Radio app. #1 for music, radio, and podcasts.